Okay, next we have different classes. This is specifically talking about when it comes to like a combat system. Different classes means that you can have different ways to defeat your enemies. You can have magic, you can have swords, you can have spears, you can have archery. I'm thinking of games like Baldur's Gate, which has a bunch of different classes. Even something like Metaphor with the archetype system. I think classes really add to how you can defeat the enemies if your game has combat, I mean. It's kind of necessary in modern games. You can't really have just one way of combat because that'll get pretty stale quick. In terms of how hard it is to implement, I think you should be focusing on it if you're going to have a class system. You can keep adding classes as you go. It's not like you need every class defined from the start. So you have some time to implement that. I'm going to put this into the B tier. I think it's really nice to have. Obviously, not all games are going to have combat or really need classes, but the games that do, it's really nice to have. Okay, next we have replayability. That's a mouthful. This kind of refers to if the game can be replayed after you finish it for the first time. And some games you really can. Like Stardew Valley, you can replay it with a different farm and plant different crops or focus on a different way of getting money. The Pokemon games you can replay with a different team. And some games aren't really replayable. Like Danganronpa, you're not really going to replay that because you already know all the twists. There's not really an incentive to replay through that. In terms of implementing replayability, it kind of depends on what game you're doing. If you're doing like a linear story game, you kind of do have to get extra work in to make players want to replay. If your game is more open-ended, like a building game or a decorating game, that's kind of like infinitely replayable because there's no real end. I think I'm gonna put replayability in the B tier. I think it's really nice to have. I don't think every game needs it to be a good game. I think a lot of games you can just play once and be done with. But if you want your game to be something that a lot of people play for long periods of time, then replayability should be a big focus. Okay, next we have lore. Lore is basically your game's world building, the story that you have. A lot of games don't really have a lot of lore, and that's perfectly fine because that's not their main focus. Their main focus is other features, but a lot of games do have lore. I'm thinking of things like The Legend of Zelda or Metaphor, which I recently finished. So the lore in that game is really interesting. Like you get to learn about the world that you're playing in. Lore isn't really too hard to implement in a technical way. You kind of just have to use storytelling and environmental storytelling. The harder part about lore is actually writing it and making it interesting and compelling without just dumping text of exposition. But obviously lore isn't needed for every game. So I think that I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think it's nice to have. Even like those games that lore isn't the main focus, it's pretty nice to have like bits of lore, like Pokopia, but it's not something that needs to be there.
Full video on YouTube.